All right, everybody, welcome to the Abundance to Give podcast. And I have an extremely special guest today out from Washington, D.C., Charlie Eisman. Is it Eisman, right? So I don't completely butcher that. Like
yep.
Eisman.
Eisman, yep.
And a lot of great things he's doing out there, you know, on top of flipping and funding loans for people and doing the real estate side of the game. He's a big philanthropist, and that is one of the biggest parts of the Abundance to Give podcast, is to really illustrate how super successful entrepreneurs like Charlie and others are giving back, helping others, leaving a legacy well beyond their time here, and that has created abundance for them in their life, hence Abundance to Give. So welcome to the show, man.
Well, I'm glad to be on the show, and like I said, I'm very impressed with the podcast itself, and you know, Abundance to Give is really the name of the game for us. I mean, if we can't build a legacy and we can't make this world a little bit better place to live, then what's the sense in being successful, right?
Well, right. And, you know, I'm sure you've started to see it at some point in your life where, you know, you make money and you do well and you get a taste of it, and that's all great. But money's just it's a starting motivator. A lot of times for fulfillment, a lot of us, especially as humans, because we're social, giving back, helping others, and leaving a legacy is how we get fulfilled. And that gives us the true kind of gut drive that pushes us to get out of bed every day. I'm not sure if you would agree with that. I presume you would.
No, I totally agree, because everybody talks about this thing called retirement, right? Oh, I want to retire. I want to have enough money to retire. But really, at the end of the day, if you do retire, what a lot of people don't realize is once you retire, what are you going to do? You got to be able to have something that drives you, right? Like you said, it gets you out of bed. And so for me, it is the giving, it is the charity, it is trying to make other people's lives better. And so, you know, that's kind of the name of the game for us.
Yeah. So to kind of expand on that, tell me a little bit about what you and your company are doing. Maybe introduce people to you personally first, and then kind of the charity side and how giving back has started this abundance side of your life.
Okay, that sounds good. So for us, we have a 6-prong business model. We have fixed and flipped over 400 houses in our careers, and we still sort of flip, but we don't flip as many as we used to flip, because another business line is the hard money business, which we're a private lender. So that's our second prong to our business model. And throughout the years, when we were fixing and flipping houses, instead of selling them all, we kept about 50 or so and put into our residential portfolio, which is business line number 3. Business line number 4 is where we do tax lien certificate investing. And so what we do is we buy other people's personal property tax and the amount of a tax lien, and we invest in that in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. The 5th line is we do own, kind of like yourself, but not as many. We do own some commercial assets. I own what's called a gypsy lot. We own a truck yard where we rent out spaces to, tractor trailers. We have about 75, 80 spaces, and we make about $400 a month a space. And so that's just a 3-acre industrial piece of property. We own a trailer park, and we own some other commercial properties. And then the last business line that we have that we just started is the Clear Sky education piece. And that's where we're coaches and mentors, kind of like yourself. We're helping other investors sort of help them get to not kind of where we are, but at least get them on their way. And we're pretty happy about that. And we've only been doing that for about 9 months, but that's our last line of business.
I love it. So talking on the tax lien side, because that's kind of a unique model in real estate, but definitely a big one. And you do it in DC and Maryland. What is your typical buy box for that? Are you getting most of your leads by scouring the county websites or other?
No, that's a very interesting question. So let me start off by saying there's 2 different kinds of property states on tax liens. Number 1 are the states where they don't issue tax lien certificates. If you're 3 to 5 years late on your property taxes, they'll actually just auction off the property at either a local courthouse or a local government administration building. Okay, that's Virginia. You're in California, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my bet is California might be the same as Virginia. It's a property tax state. Now, in Virginia, in Maryland and DC, not Virginia, these are called tax lien states. And what they do is if you're late on your personal property tax, they'll issue to the public in an auction forum the actual tax lien certificate. So there's two ways that you make money. Number one, the first way is that you earn interest on that tax lien certificate. And don't get upset with me, but like in Washington, D.C., if we don't get the property, we actually get an 18% return on our money. In Maryland, depending upon which county you're in, you can get anywhere from a 19.5% return to a 21% return. So if you buy the tax lien certificate and the property owner redeems it, in other words, they bring to current their property taxes, then you just get paid off by the local jurisdiction on where you own the tax lien certificate.
Gotcha. With your interest.
With your interest. And we call that the booby prize. All right. So people are probably out there thinking, oh, they're laughing at me saying, you're earning 18 to 21%. You call that the booby prize. Well, here's the prize that we go after. And so what happens is if you have that tax lien certificate and you actually own it, you have to wait about 6 months. Once you wait 6 months, you then are allowed to file what's called a quiet title lawsuit against the property. In other words, you're going to go through the local court system to get ownership of that property. Now, this might take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. But at the end of it, though, if nobody shows up to the court, nobody pays the property taxes, then the judge will actually offer you a deed to that property. And so for us, one of the ways that we like to do it is we like to buy tax lien certificates where it's owned by estates, right? It might be owned by an LLC, where an investment LLC, where the owners are fighting amongst each other. And so we have various strategies on how we can not get only the interest, but we could also acquire the property.
Well, yeah. And are you getting the property with no additional out-of-pocket capital? You're just acquiring the deed, or do you have to pay for that deed upon that sale?
Good question. Okay. Again, this is very jurisdiction specific. In Washington, D.C., we're getting the deed for the amount of money that we paid for the tax lien certificate. And we're going to have to owe subsequent tax payments. That's right. That's right. In Maryland, it's slightly different. Let's say if you're buying a house that's worth $600,000 and you're only buying a $20,000 tax lien, you're probably going to have to buy that property for $300,000. There is an amount that you need to pay, but you don't have to pay that $300,000 right away. You only pay the initial $20,000 for the tax lien certificate, and then if you do get the deed, then you'll have to pay an additional up to $300,000 to actually get the deed. So remember, it's jurisdiction specific.
Gotcha. Interesting. And then how many states are certificate based, like you said, versus, say, California, where they don't issue a certificate and they just auction it at a certain point in time at 5 years, per se?
Now, it's roughly 50-50. Half the states issue tax lien certificates and the other half do not. Now, I'm obviously considering Washington, D.C. as a state, so that would be number 51, because D.C. is, believe it or not, even though it's not a state, it is its own jurisdiction. And so because it's its own jurisdiction, they have their own laws that are D.C. specific.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's very interesting. I've never dealt with the tax lien side of it, but that's very interesting. And it's great because, like you said, you're getting double revenue, because what's happening, like you said, is the counties or the states are saying, listen, we don't want to hold on to this debt, right? We want to earn some money on it. So why don't we sell off the certificate, like you're saying, and allow somebody else to take on that burden, but get paid. And then in the event that they don't get paid, they can now acquire the property, right? So they're passing on the risk is all they're doing. And then they're getting money now versus later.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it really is a win-win for everybody, because the local jurisdiction gets their money right away. And really that's all they want.
They get their revenue for their property taxes, right? Yeah. Yep.
And especially like these cities, right? So let's just talk about San Francisco, Los Angeles, DC, New York, Chicago. Because they're hemorrhaging and hurting because of the, office space problems that they're having, their revenues are going to go way down, because they're going to have to write all that down. So by issuing on the residential side these tax lien certificates, it makes it a lot easier for them to get their money faster. Yeah.
Sure. And are they taking par value or a discount to the actual tax that's owed?
Well, the jurisdictions are taking par value. And so the way they auction off these tax liens is that because it has to be a public format, they do auction them off. So let's say, for example, Washington, D.C. is paying out, let's say there's a $30,000 tax lien, right? That tax lien will go to auction in a public forum. So a lot of bidders will show up. And what happens is they could bid the $30,000, they could pay $45,000 for it, right? So if they pay $45,000, they only get an 18% return on $30,000. But really, if they pay $45,000 and they're getting an 18% on $30,000, that's still a pretty good return on the $45,000. You follow? And then what happens is if the property owner doesn't pay their property taxes the following year, then because you own the tax lien certificate, you can then pay their taxes in what's called a subsequent, and then you get a straight 18% return on that money.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. That's wild. I mean, it's a whole business model, right? And is the ultimate goal to acquire the property or not?
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to get the property. Now, what you have to understand, though, is that you are going to be acquiring a property that, might be blighted. It's probably going to be vacant, but it's going to need a full gut job, right? So like in Washington, D.C., where the inventory is much older, 1910s to 1930s, a full gut renovation might cost you $150,000, $200,000. So you're going to have to put that in there to get the property to, its best after repair value.
Are you doing any of that assessment on the condition of the property up front? Or because it takes time, are you waiting to do that later?
No, it's not. This business is very research intensive at the very beginning. Yeah. So let's say, for example, there's a middle of July auction. Usually in Washington, D.C., the auctions are July 15th. We literally spend the first 2 weeks of July not only going through all the tax lien certificates that are out there. And in our case, it might be 3,000. It might be 3,000 properties. But what we're doing, though, is we have a certain search criteria that we do, like any of the lots. Like if it's like land that's going for sale, we'll take that off the list. If it's commercial office buildings or commercial spaces that has maybe a couple $1 million in tax liens, that's coming off the list. So we sort of whittle the list down. Then once we whittle the list down, we'll actually do a title search on it. We'll find out if an estate owns it or an LLC owns it. We'll do a lien search on it to see if it's encumbered. The ones that we like to buy usually don't have any debt on them. And so the more complicated the title is, that's kind of the ones that we go after. And then once we do that, then we get our list whittled down to about, let's say it's 300. We will literally drive by all 300 properties and do not only an OG check, but we'll do an outside exterior conditional check as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because that way you know your play going in the door. If you're having to estimate, this thing's going to cost us $80,000 or $100,000 if we have to take it over. So yeah, we're working the tax cert side of it. But if we have to acquire the asset and, like you said, turn it to then resell it, you want to make sure you can do that and then make sure the exit value is still there. Right?
No, you're absolutely right. And just as importantly, the other thing that we're doing too is we're doing what's called a valuation on each house as well. So let's say the property is worth, and I'll throw out some numbers, and I know maybe not for San Diego, this might not make sense, but let's say the property is worth $400,000 in its after repair value condition, but it needs a full gut, right? And let's say the tax lien is $100,000 and the renovation might be $200,000. You're in at $300,000. We probably won't buy that tax lien for that amount because remember, this is going to be a year and a half, 2 years down the road of more taxes due, more conditional distress. So you have to know going in that if the lien is more than what makes sense to buy it for, then you just pass on that tax lien. And it's that's really important because in Washington, D.C., that's not so much the case. But if you're going to like Baltimore City, if you're going to Cleveland, Ohio, if you're going to Detroit, Michigan, if you're going to some of these other, blue collar cities where the valuations aren't there, you could get really stuck by buying this tax lien certificate and your investment could go to zero if you're not careful.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure that the valuation's there on the exit and you in the repair.
Yeah.
It's like anything. It's just doing a flip, but in a different way, because you're trying to acquire. You're trying to acquire first through tax certificates on a distressed basis. And if it leads to having to buy the property down the road, you want to make sure you can flip it and make money.
That's exactly right.
You're having to pay
really what it is because
pay for the tax regardless, right? Because you're paying for the tax initially.
For sure.
Then, like you said, every year
Yes.
as it goes, you're having to pay for that too, right?
That's exactly right. And especially in some jurisdictions, it's not even though most jurisdictions is an annual assessment, it's actually a 6-month pay-in. So every 6 months is when half that property tax is due. So every 6 months you're writing these big checks, because when we go and bid, we'll spend $3 million, $2 million at a time at these auctions. And so for us, it's become, like I said, it's another business line, but it's become a pretty big size of part of our business that we have to manage and maintain. Yeah. And oh, by the way, we do have a good bank relationship in that they'll give us leverage on these tax lien certificates. And so it's wonderful.
Sure. Yeah, so you have the banking there for a line of credit, and then you bring in investors as well to fill the line and kind of fund it?
Okay, the answer to that is no. We don't bring in investors for their tax lien certificate side. Where we bring in investors is in our hard money fund. So on the hard money side, we're what's called an asset-based lender. So I don't, people are going to laugh, but I don't pull credit. I don't check income. I don't check anything. I lend to fix and flip investors. And what I really, really care about is the underlying asset. I'm an asset-based lender, so I care about the purchase price. I care about the equity room that they've created, and that's what we lend into. And so on the hard money side, we have what's called kind of like what you do. You do syndications. We have what's called a pooled money fund. And so we've got 2 debt offerings, $30 million, $30 million. We've got about $45 million out on the street in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. And so that's just another business line, but that's where we take in investors.
Okay. And can that hard money also lend into these tax lien certificates? Like, can it lend from one business to the other in a way? Or no?
It could, but you're going to laugh though when I say this. But, the return on the tax liens is, let's say, 18%. But I go out on my hard money business at 12% and 3 points. So if one business was going to lend to the other business, I'm not going to charge myself 12%.
Right. No, of course not. Yes, that's a little bit of a par in market. Most of the hard money I deal with is about 10% and 2 points. But every market's different,
Well,
and then what do you lend
that's
on?
because you're in California.
Do you lend on like 90% of purchase price and 100% of reno?
Well, yes, but more important, I will do 100. If there's enough room in the deal, let's say it's $600,000 ARV, and they're buying it for, I'm making up numbers, $350, and they're only putting in $50,000 into it to make a $400,000 loan to cost, I'll lend 100%.
Yep.
Everything that we do.
Do you lend nationwide?
Well, no, we're Maryland, D.C., Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Louisiana. So we're primarily East Coast just because it's close to us and we know the markets. Like, for example, I couldn't come into California because California has very strict licensing rules and licensing laws. And because we're in the private lending space, it's business to business. We don't have our NMLS ID. I'm not a licensed mortgage guy. I'm a private lender. I'm in the private space.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. So you're East Coast based for those properties. That's amazing. So talk about the kind of switching gears from the business. I know we went off on a tangent there, but I love it. It's like a lot of people love to learn about that avenue, which is a unique avenue of business. And they hear about it a lot, but it has its intricacies, and you got to sounds like you really got to know what you're doing going in the door, or you go and you purchase these, call it cheap tax certificates, but they're really not. At the end of the day, you got to make sure that you have the line to carry it, sounds like. And if you have to acquire the property to preserve your collateral and make sure that exit value is there on that collateral too, if you have to do some rehab, which in most cases you're going to have to. So you're really looking at the long play no matter what.
Yeah, it's totally about the long play. And for us, though, we cut our teeth in nothing but distressed assets, whether it's commercial distressed assets or primarily for us, it's residential distressed assets. That's where we cut our teeth because we fixed and flipped so many houses. And so as a result of that, what's happened is that we've just developed these different business lines that for us, it's probably second nature just because we've dealt in distressed assets all our lives. And, some folks might not know about it. They think, oh, this sounds really hard and really complicated. But at the end of the day, if you understand the basic distress asset techniques, as far as purchasing them, distress, financial distress, family distress, conditional distress, you know how to evaluate them, you understand how to run crews, you understand how to do renovation budgets, and you understand the after repair value. Once you've done that over and over again, there are just so many different ways that you can go out there and make money. And as we've matured in our real estate careers, we've just created those avenues. As a matter of fact, we backed into the hard money space. We backed into the tax lien certificate space. This wasn't something that we wanted to do when we grew up. I never grew up saying, oh, I want to be a hard money lender. That never happened. We literally backed into these business lines. Yeah.
Yeah, and you did it in a way by default of necessity in a way, I'm sure. So tell me about the philanthropy side and how your current givings and what you like to give to and what you're most passionate about.
Okay, I've got a couple things that we do that I'm most passionate about. So I'm part of a nonprofit. Matter of fact, I'm president of this nonprofit called Catholics for Housing. And you're going to actually laugh at this story. It was a nonprofit for affordable housing, right? So we have some affordable dwelling units. We have not accessory dwelling units, but affordable dwelling units. We own a bunch of those. We own a trailer park. We own a bunch of rentals. And what we do is we keep the rents affordable. We have certain area median incomes that we rent to, as 40%, 60% AMI. And so we have disadvantaged families living in our units. And so I've been president of that for 6 years. But I've been part of it for about 12 years. I'm part of the investment committee. Matter of fact, I am the investment committee. I helped this organization acquire a dilapidated trailer park. And so we own a 60-unit trailer park that was going to get, the city of Manassas was going to go ahead and condemn it. And so we had to buy it at a good price. We had to put in a sewer system. We had to put in a water system. We had to put in a storm management system. So I helped that charity buy this trailer park. And so from then on, we have just acquired all of these low-income housing assets that we can give back to unfortunate people in the form of rents. Now, if they want to buy them, we'll allow them to do a rent-to-own so they can get on their feet and get into home ownership. So I've been doing that for a long time, and that's one of the big charities that I'm very happy about. And so what happened was we were Catholics for Housing. Now we're CFH Inc. or Citizens for Housing. And the reason behind that is I have a lot of Jewish business partners. And so they really couldn't donate to a charity called Catholics for Housing. So we changed the name so that I could raise more and more donations, and that's been pretty successful. The other reason why we had to change the name was because when you apply for, let's say, county-specific grants, they will not lend to denominational charities. And so that's the other reason why we had to change the name. But the low-income housing space, it is such a problem in this country because people are having a hard time affording a place to live. So I always tell people, even though we own the house, it's still your home. And so that's kind of what we do is we provide a lot of housing to people that can't really afford it. And so I really love that. And so the next charity that I absolutely love, that this is why I get up every day, and I think you could probably appreciate this charity, is that we have a charity called Clear Sky Sports Angels. And so what that charity does is it gives money to various organizations to allow, disadvantaged youth to participate in travel sports. For example, travel soccer, AAU basketball, lacrosse, right? I even have a BMX bike club that we sponsor so that they can, Hispanic kids that can't afford to be in bike racing, they can afford to buy a bike. We buy bikes for them. So what I'm trying to do in this area is level the playing field for the disadvantaged youth. And if they have a little bit of talent and they want to play travel sports, then we're enabling them a pathway to play travel sports. And that's kind of what keeps me going because, you know, I've coached AAU basketball for 12 years. I've coached high school basketball for 10 years, strictly volunteer basis. And there's nothing that really gets my craw more than a youngster who's at a disadvantage because they cannot afford to participate in travel sports. And so that's what we do.
Yeah. And it's expensive, man. I mean, I'm dealing it with my kids and soccer and stuff, so I get it. I mean, I can only fathom. I mean, you get a family, you know, that has kids or multiple kids and they want to provide for them. But yeah, the club-based travel sports and club-based programs are expensive. But it also keeps kids out of trouble, which is why it's even more important because, yeah, it provides them the ability maybe to.
I can't tell you how important that is, right? Yep.
Yeah. But it keeps them out of trouble, keeps them focused, keeps their energy in the right direction, hopefully surrounds them with good role models and mentors as well. I mean, the whole side of being a part of a team or even an individual sport, either way, it requires discipline, right? And focus and energy. And it takes their energy away from maybe hanging out on the, you know, the sidewalks or on, you know, corners and getting into bad things, man. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And not only that, but it also gives them a nice positive focus in life. It gives them something to look forward to. So let's say they're pretty talented at sports. You know, hopefully for us, it's gonna go into the classroom, right? Because they're good at sports, then they'll do better in school, right? But the other problem, though, that we run into is that the thing that you have to understand is most of these kids that can't afford to play, let's say, travel sports, they're from single parent households. And so a lot of times that single parent is working 2 or 3 jobs. And so one of the other things that we've bridged the gap to is that we're also helping arrange to get them rides to and from practice. Because if we're going to, give money to an organization and we're going to sponsor a child, right, we have to ensure that they have rides to and from practice and that they're committed and disciplined. So that's pretty important as well.
Oh, that's, I never even thought about that, but yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah. And like you said, they're maybe raised by single parent mothers, right? Where there's 3, 4, 5 kids in a class or in a home. And yeah, there's only so much they can do, but they got to be able to get around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so
I love that.
That's the other thing.
That's an incredible cause. So you got your 5 different lines of business, the charity side of things. You know, what does 2025 look for you? And when you say are you flipping, how many flips are you typically doing in a year now? You said you've kind of dwindled down on that, but where's that line of business? And is there a specific reason you're not flipping as much?
Yeah, the biggest reason why we're not flipping as much is because, most of our attention is focused on two avenues. Number one, the hard money business, right? Where we have a lot of money out on the street. And so that business is very time consuming because we chose not to grow our business from a personnel standpoint. It's just pretty much me and a partner, and we have another lady who runs something called the mortgage office. So we run a tight ship, and that's a big time. We spend a lot of time on that. The other thing too is we just launched Clear Sky Education, the coaching and mentoring, and so we built out a bunch of courses. We wrote a book, The Roadmap to Wealth in Real Estate Investing, kind of like follows our pathway of our careers. And so we built out a lot of courses. We have students and mentoring. So most of our time these days is spent on Clear Sky Education and the hard money business. But with that said, though, is because of COVID, what happened with COVID was a behavioral change, and people stayed in their houses. So what happened in the fix and flip business, at least on the East Coast, is that the inventory dwindled. People stayed in their houses. Financially, they weren't so distressed. There weren't that many foreclosures. People weren't moving. And so the number of deals that were out there, let's say pre-2020, was a lot more than right now. And so where we were flipping, let's say 3 or 4 houses a month, we might be flipping 1 or 2 houses a month. So just because of behavioral changes, because of our business focus, we don't fix and flip that many houses anymore. As a matter of fact, if we get a couple of good deals, heck, we'll just give them to our students. Then us do it. And then we'll just monitor the progress of the student.
Just wholesale them over.
Yeah, we don't even do that. I mean,
I love that.
We don't even wholesale them because for us, our students are probably going to use us for the hard money. So,
And no, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if you can help fund them.
Yep.
And how did, with that funding business, because you pool the money with that, so investors come into that. How did you get that line of business started? I mean, when did it start? How long has it been around? And how did you initially fund it?
These are great questions. And if I could have asked you to write up some questions, this would have been a perfect question. Do you remember when I said we backed into two businesses, the tax lien certificate business and the hard money lending business? We literally backed into the hard money business. I got a great story for you. And I'll give him a little shout out, but I'll only give you his first name. So remember, we bought a lot of pre-foreclosures. I went to a lot of courthouse auctions, and that's how I bought most of our inventory, right? It was either pre-foreclosure before it goes to the courthouse steps, or I would buy it at auction at the courthouse steps. Well, when you go to these auctions day in and day out, 3-4 times a day, you meet the same bidders, right? You run into the same bidders and you get to know them. You get to know if they're married. You get to know if they have kids. You get to know what they like to do, because in between auctions, you really can't go anywhere else because they're so spread apart that it doesn't allow you time to do that. So you talk to people. So what happened was, one of my, believe it or not, courthouse competitors, his name was Jimmy, he bought a property in another jurisdiction. And it was Fairfax County, Virginia. I was in Prince William County, Virginia at the time, bidding against him on some properties. And so he pulls me aside after the auction and he goes to me, he goes, Charlie, he goes, I just bought a condo in Fairfax. It was like a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. The condo's worth $350, right? Fixed up, not much work needed. I bought it for $225. However, here's my problem. And he didn't even ask. He told me, he goes, you are going to give me a $200,000 loan against this condo. I had to put up a $25,000 cashier check, earnest money. 225 minus 25 is 200. He goes, you are going to give me a loan. I said, Jimmy, what are you talking about? He goes, I know you got money. You're just going to give me a loan. So you know what I said to him? And I knew it was going to close in 2 weeks because that's the way courthouse auctions are. And so it's not like California where you got to bring the entire amount just to bid. In Virginia, you only have to bring maybe 10%, right? And so I said, okay, Jimmy, I will give you the loan. So then I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Now I'm what's called a hard money lender. So we had to go and figure out how to actually conduct the hard money business. So then what I did is I went home, I created this term sheet, right? I had to figure out what hard money lenders were going for, what the rates and points and all that were. So I gave him a 1-page term sheet that defined the loan, sent it to him over email. He signed it, sent it back. We're closing in 2 weeks. And then I had to get loan docs ready for his closing. And so that's how our hard money business got started. We didn't even know we were hard money lenders at the time because it wasn't even called the hard money business. And that was about 13 years ago, 12 years ago.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so there you go. So now you got your hard money loan on the property. Did they come out of pocket with anything, or did you finance 100% of that?
Remember, he bought it for $225 at the courthouse steps. He put up a $25,000 cashier check. So I just gave him $200,000. And that was that. And then he was going to cover the, I think it was like a $10,000 renovation. So he covered the renovation on his own. We closed in, a week, 10 days. He had this thing flipped out in 90 days or less, and we got paid back. And there you go. But the biggest problem was, rock and roll. And so what happened what happens is when you do what's called a word of mouth business and people know that you have money and they know that you're lending, then all hell breaks loose, right? People start calling you out of the blue, asking you for money. And then we're like, oh my gosh, we're getting too much of a demand. It sort of blew out our cash stockpile. So then we had to start going and raising investor money. We had to start making bank relationships. So we actually had to build a bona fide business that we really had no idea what we were doing. And so that's what happened.
It's interesting how that all comes together. And then when you take on investor money into that, because you're pooling it, I mean, there's got to be a delta, because if you're offering at 12%, are you paying them like 8%?
Yeah, at the very beginning, because we needed money, we were paying out double-digit returns. So we were actually paying out 10%. So we were paying all of our investors 10%. You know, the funny thing is people tell you, do not do business with friends and family. But that is where all of our money came from at the very, very beginning. And it's funny because all those folks that invested with us 12 and a half years ago, they are still investors with us at their 10% because we've never cut them down. And so all of the new money coming in now is around 8%, right? So 8%. Okay. So between the new money coming in at 8%, the old money at 10%, our bank lines, the blended rate across our business platform, the 45 million is about 9.1%. So we have a 9.1% blended rate across the platform, but we're going out at 12% at roughly 12 and 3. But our whole objective, though, is to go out at 12% and 3 points in 6 months or less. So if I take that $500,000 and I go out at 12% and 3 points, and if I get that $500,000 back, it's actual an annualized return of 18%. Right. So you could do
or because you're saying you get it back in 6 months.
Well, we try to get it back in 6 months or less. Yeah.
6 months or less. Okay. So wouldn't it be 24% if you're giving a 12%? If you're able to turn that money twice, or you're not able to turn it twice?
Yeah, well, no, because it's 12% for the entire year, right? But then the 3 points would be doubled. So 3 plus 3 is 6. So 6 plus 12 is 8. So that's our target is 18. Now, some loans stay out there more than 6 months. They're 9 months to a year. Other loans come back in 4 months or 5 months. So, so it's all a blending, right? It's all a blending. It's across the platform. But here's the beautiful thing, right? So just do the math, and let's keep it simple. And I'm not even talking about broker price opinion fees, doc prep fees, loan origination fees that we're charging. I'm not even talking about that. So if you're running, let's say, a $40 million lending business, right? And you're getting, let's say, an 18% return, and your blended rate is a full blend of that 40 million at 9%, you're in essence making a 9% per annum arbitrage. So it's not bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's not bad at all. Not bad at all. And you're collateralized, right? You're collateralized against an asset, physical asset that you could take over. You hate to have to do that, but you could take it over,
That's exactly right. Yeah, not only we collateral,
I can see how the lending,
but I
can see how the lending, hard money side is attractive. What would you say the downfalls of the hard money side? Like, why do hard money guys go out of business?
Because they overlend into the asset, and because they don't understand the underlying borrower. They don't understand the contractor that's doing the work. And so a lot of times the borrower overbuys, because there's a lot of investor, they're desperate right now, these flippers. They overbuy. They underestimate the renovation. And so the hard money lender doesn't do their asset-based due diligence. Most guys in the country care more about the borrower and their credit score and their income more so than the asset. We care about all aspects of the asset, all the way down to the renovation dollars. Does it make sense? And we actually care more about the contractor doing the work than we care about the borrower, because we have to understand that contractor, what their track record is, what their licensing is, and what their insurance is, and how reputable they are. Because if you're working with a contractor that absolutely is not very good, then that will cost you. And that's what's happened to a lot of hard money lenders.
Gotcha. No, and that makes complete sense. I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm a licensed general contractor myself, so understanding the construction side of it and the renovation. And rule number 1 in construction, it always takes longer than you think. Rule number 2, it always costs more than you think. So, having good contingency.
No, you're absolutely right. So we build in. So what we do on the construction side, right? And you're going to laugh at this because we're on the hard money side, we're very conservative, right? So we always include in there a 20% buffer. Even with our most experienced clients. So if it's a $50,000 renovation, I say it's 60. And we also go by a rule of thumb that for each $1,000 you spend, so let's say a $60,000 renovation, minimal, that needs to be done in 60 days, right? For us, when we're flipping houses, it's more like $2,000 a day. If I have a $60,000 budget, we're going to be done in 30 days. So we keep things very, conservative. We have simple rules of thumb. And so that's been pretty much the basis for our success, is that everything is simple.
Yeah, and speed is everything, right? Obviously quality, but speed, because the money's clicking, right? We all know the money's clicking interest. So even from a flipper's perspective, being able to get in and get out and turn that property is the way to go.
Yeah, no, it's great. Matter of fact, if you're ever thinking about doing another business line, this is the hard money business is the way to go.
Yeah, I guess you got to get your initial funding up front, right? So you create a pooled fund, I'm guessing. That's a hard money fund, and you bring people in at that, like you said, at 9% or 8% or whatever it is, annualized return on their money, and you're pooling it out on these types of assets. So that's pretty much how you're raising it. It's from people, and then at some point you can collateralize that to a normal commercial bank locally, I'm guessing, and get more lines of credit, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so when the interest rate environment was a little bit more investor friendly, we were getting really, really low interest rates. And so our blended rate was a little bit lower. But as the interest rates ticked up, instead of borrowing that amount of money from the commercial lenders, we sort of just didn't borrow as much. So let's say where I might have borrowed out of let's say $40 million, let's say I need to borrow 10 million of that. And where I would have borrowed the 10 million, let's say 5 years ago, now at that $40 million, I'm only borrowing $5 million, but at higher interest rates. But that's okay. We've just created, we're more equitized that way, and that's okay.
Now, do you pay monthly out to your investors in your pool, or is it quarterly, or how do you pay out to the investors that give you money?
All right. So for us, it's funny because you ever heard, the Ides of March, right?
Say that again?
The Ides of March is on the 15th. Okay, so the Ides of March, IDES, right? Ides of March is March 15th. So that's a date going back for the Romans, right? And so what we do is every month on the 15th, we call that Clear Sky Financial Day. So all of our investors get an interest check on the 15th of the month. And we've been doing that like clockwork. That's been going on for 12 and a half years.
Okay. What platforms do you like to use for managing your businesses like that?
Oh, that's a good question. So, okay, for the hard money business, we use a platform called the Mortgage Office. It's an internet-based software package, but it's run on what's called Amazon Web Services. So that the security on the data is top-notch. On our rental business, we have a tool called PropertyWare. There's two big tools on the rental side. It's called AppFolio and PropertyWare. There might be some other tools out in California, but we choose to use PropertyWare. And then actually, believe it or not, I own that truck. Remember the truck yard I told you about? The gypsy lot where we do the tractor trailers? We have another piece of software called NetPark. So I could basically own an industrial piece of property anywhere in the United States, provided it's a by right use, and I can rent it out to tractor trailers, and they can not only get a lease, get a spot, but they also pay their rent on this app. And so all these platforms and apps that I talk about, they all integrate into QuickBooks. And so it makes our year-end close, it makes our monthly closes much easier. But our business, because we're engineers and my partner's an MBA, we have all of our back-end processes. They're pretty much integrated, and they're system orientated. We don't have to focus on it that much. And so it enables us to do more with less.
Yeah, I was reading about and watching. So you had some stuff in the Secret Service, not Secret Service, but I was watching your other partners and stuff. You guys had security clearances and stuff. Am I guessing this right? In your former business days?
You went back a long time. Okay. So I have an electronic engineering degree. I went to school in Kansas City, Missouri. I came back to the Washington D.C. area, and I was in the black ops world. So I was what's called a data engineer, and so I was in the black ops world. I can say it now because it's now public information, but I was working for what's called the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, and so we were working on what's called the spy satellites. So I was in the spy satellite program for a very long time. I was doing all, data engineering, telemetry processing of the satellites, both imagery data and systems data, the health of the vehicles itself. And we were literally spying on the other side of the world via these satellite imagery data. So I did that for a while, and then I branched into what's called data warehousing. So I was into Oracle, Sybase, SQL Server databases. I know I'm dating myself. And so I was actually a data warehouse engineer as well. But because I went through a divorce, I had to raise 2 boys. And so I needed to get into a profession that allowed me to coach their teams and to be with them more often. I couldn't really work an engineering job anymore because they had certain hourly requirements. And back in those days, you couldn't work from home. And especially being in the black ops world, you had to go into a SCIF. And so, but I had my real estate license, and I was always in real estate investing. And so then I just jumped head first into real estate investing. And so that's what happened.
Very interesting. What a great story. I love it. I love it. Well, where can people kind of find you? Where would you recommend? Do they find you online? Do they find you through Instagram? What would you recommend?
Okay, yeah, that's probably the best way. At charlieeinsman.com. It's very simple. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. We have YouTube offerings as well. We also are online courses. We wrote a book, The Roadmap to Wealth in Real Estate Investing. It's on Amazon. It's not one of these self-published books. We did get published, and so it's getting to be a little bit more popular. We were on the bestseller list for 3 different categories at one point in time, and so that's probably the best way to find me. We have a variety of websites out there. We do coaching and mentoring, and so I'm out there.
And then how did you do the full published book? I mean, how long did that take you, and who did it for you?
Okay, so what happened is before COVID, I wrote the manuscript. It wasn't the best manuscript because it was kind of like one of those real estate books where it's kind of boring. And so what happened was COVID happened, and so everything changed. Our hard money business skyrocketed. Our fix and flip business was good, our rental portfolio. And so we took a step back from it. I got my partners involved. And so what happened was then we finally did the first manuscript. And then what happened is a ghostwriter read the manuscript, and she liked it so much that she actually picked us up to write it from a ghostwriting standpoint. But what she did, though, was he changed it to a lot more storytelling. So she interviewed all 3 of us, and that's Sam Jackson and Ed Grass. She interviewed us for a long time. She added in a lot of humor to the real estate book, and she also added in a lot of our stories. And so it made it more, reader-friendly to the normal layman. And it is very well done, actually. And a lot of people see it. You could tell the way I write. My writing style is like the 6th grade writing style. I'm an educated guy, but my writing style isn't perfect. So I write the way I talk, and people like that. And then what happened is the ghostwriter who helped us actually write it, she had a couple of publishing houses that she sent the manuscript to, and they actually loved it. So then a publisher by the name of Munn Publishing picked us up out of New Jersey, and that's how we got published. And that was kind of nice.
That is amazing. That's a great story. So, yes, you did the initial writing of it. And how long did that take you to do the initial writing?
So once the manuscript was done, and then we turned it over to the ghostwriter, that took another year. Just for her to flesh out all of her stories. She had to flesh out who we were as people, our personalities. Then she had to figure out what kind of humor that we would like, because the other author, Ed Grass, happens to be a litigation attorney. And so he writes in, his writing level is way higher than anything. He's a lawyer. And so he does briefs all the time, and he's very in all kinds of courts, bankruptcy court, general district court, federal courts, all kinds of courts. And so his writing style is much higher than mine. And so Sam was probably in between us. So we had to put together all of our different writing styles. And then, so that took a minute to do. And then we finally did that. Even though out of the 16 chapters, I probably wrote 13 of them. Sam's wrote 1, Ed's wrote a couple. But you can tell as you go through the book, the little bit change in writing styles. But that's okay.
I love it. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at, what's the name of it again?
The Roadmap to Wealth in Real Estate Investing.
Okay. The Roadmap to Wealth in Real Estate Investing. I will take a peek at that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. This was awesome, man. I learned so much stuff that I wanted to learn about too. And it sounds like I may have to start a hard money business.
Well, if you ever want to start a hard money business, we would love to help.
Yeah. I mean, they always say, you want to be as high up on the totem pole as you can, right? And if you think about it, technically, flipping, while awesome, is technically at the bottom of that totem pole, because you need to obviously find the deals. So there's data, right? For that data to be able to find deals and all that. And then you have people that will transact in between them. So maybe that's wholesalers. You need people to fund them. So that's your lenders. And then, of course, you have the physical workers, which is your flippers that'll turn them, make it beautiful, sell them, and make a profit. But they're kind of the last on that kind of real estate flipping totem pole. So lending is a huge part of it, and data is a huge part of it, I would say. Wouldn't you agree?
No. I mean, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And the other thing that we both probably already understand is that when the barrier of entry is really, really high to do something, less and less people are doing it, right? So like wholesaler, not to be, I don't want to, be condescending, but wholesaling, you just need to be able to find a property, put it under contract, and then have a cash buyer to assign the contract to. The barrier of entry there isn't that high, right? But the barrier of entry to be a hard money lender is very high, because you need millions and millions of dollars, right? You need to be really, really, really educated, right? You really need to understand the contracting business. You need to understand the real estate business. So the barrier of entry is really, really high. So that means there's less people doing it, which means there's more opportunities for you to make more money.
Now, would you, because you guys are out on the East Coast on the hard money side, you're saying the main thing that has stopped you from expanding has been the NMLS, like the broker's license type stuff?
No, actually,
or just knowledge of the market.
Well, for us, no. The expanding has to do with existing capital and existing relationships, right? So, for example, we're at about, 40 to 45 million right now on the streets. Our demand is so high, I could jump to 60, 70 million dollars in 3 to 6 months. So there's always a capital requirement. Like, we always need to go and raise money if we're going to expand. But we're to the point now where, for us, that's enough money, right? We have enough money out there for 2 guys and a work person, right? That's enough money for us. And so if we get the wild hair to expand, what I would want to do is I would want to expand in other territories, maybe from a franchise standpoint, because let's say if I'm lending in, Austin, Texas, or Dallas, Texas, or even in San Diego, right? If I'm lending there, I need to have boots on the ground. I need to have somebody who can go there and touch that asset. I need to have somebody who can evaluate that asset from an after repair standpoint. So you have to put in all this different infrastructure in place for you to be successful. Now, we obviously know how to be successful, but you got to have that infrastructure, because you're going to have other hard money competition as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, there's a lot of hard money guys, right? And they're even getting super tech savvy. I mean, what's it called, Backflip or whatever it is. It's online based platforms, and like all these platforms that are out there now that are there. I mean, it's wild. I mean, and the tech that's going into them as well, where everything can pretty much be run right online through the website, and you can apply for it, get approved through it, fund through it, run it through it, manage it through it, the whole 9 yards, through an online platform for the hard money. So it's definitely there.
But remember, at the end of the day, it's still a people business. It's still an asset business. You have real live contractors. You have to evaluate contractors, contractor budgets, those kinds of things. So, there's certain things that, and I'm a technology guy too, there's certain things that technology isn't going to be able to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree, especially on the contractor and the knowledge side, right, of the person flipping, that they they know what to do. I mean, one of the best things about getting my contractor's license and learning from my father and the ground up construction game is how to call out bullshit to a lot of the contractors. I mean, we do some of our own contracting, but a lot of it is just knowledge of doing it and having it for our own businesses if we need it to drop cost and control cost. But also, I can't tell you the amount of times I call out contractors because I'm like, you say it's going to cost this much and take this long? I'm like, dude, come on. I know you can do it for this and you can do it for this. You're just trying to rake it in. So it's that side of it too.
Yeah, no, that's the most, in my view, that's the most important side.